looking at Raymond C. Horsch's 1973 film, The Erotic Memoirs of a Male Chauvinist Pig.
Alice's fantasies are getting to be a bit too much. I must admit, at first I enjoyed them. But lately they're a pain in the ass.
Barney, there's something I want you to do for me. Something I've dreamed about my whole life. I'm serious. I want to be raped.
Sex is everything.
It's funny that on the first episode of the show, I was talking about the spine being inconsistent with Daisy May and a formal faucet, and funnily enough, this is total coincidence that the spine as well just says male chauvinist pig. I guess they couldn't fit the whole title on here. Even on the front, male chauvinist pig is very very prominent, so I guess you can pretty much just call it that. I would still put it next to the E's on my shelf, but this is a DVD review from 2012. This is a DVD released by Distribpix of Raymond C. Horsch's The Erotic Memoirs of a Male Chauvinist Pig. This film stars Paul Taylor, Georgina Spelvin, Tina Russell, Helen Madigan, Annie Matthew, Bill Galt. It's a good cast. A lot of women in this cast. And I guess I'll probably just stay up front. I'm not going to get too much into Raymond Horsch's personal life. That's a whole other kind of conversation there. Raymond Horsch is a very notable figure in the adult industry, more so about his shenanigans outside of his career than the actual work that he did, because he didn't really do many films, and this was his debut film, and then he would go on to do stuff much, much later. I'm talking about into the 2000s when he did start to do documentaries, films like Slaves and Horror from 2017, but still, it's definitely something to be noted that this was his only directed film, and yet it still is memorable, I think in part probably because of the cast as well, which is funny to say because we have Paul Taylor in this film who's playing the main character Barney, and this is the only film that he did. I mean, Georgina Spelvin would be the other primary big name on this, of course Tina Russell as well, and Helen Madigan, Annie Matthew, the bigger kind of names on this, but I mean, he is the one that's at the forefront of this. So to get into the feature, we have him playing this character Barney, and as the title suggests, he is in fact a male chauvinist pig, and these are his erotic memoirs. He goes throughout the film talking into this tape recorder about his different kind of perspectives on life, on women. He has an addiction to marriage that he says right at the beginning of the film. Actually, the beginning of the film starts with a quote that's so dark it's kind of difficult to see, and I'll talk about in a little bit with the liner notes how there was an issue with the lighting in the post-production, but there's a quote at the beginning that I had to squint my eyes to read. And the quote reads, "A wise man would avoid sex. The position is ridiculous. The pleasure is momentary. And the price is exorbitant." And actually where I'm pulling from now, I can't even see the name here. So, a wise man. That's a good guy. Good guy. All right. So yeah, it starts off in bed. And he's talking to this tape recorder, talking about, how marriage is, for him, it's like cigarettes, it's sort of like he's addicted to it. He's been through a couple marriages so far. And right off the bat, it starts off in a very interesting way where he's laying in bed, and then one of his girlfriends comes out, and she's out there with a whip, and she's ready to go, man. And actually, there's not even a sex scene right there. She just comes out with a whip and almost hits a lamp on the other side of the room. I noticed that, man. And this is a film that's going through a lot of different kind of, I don't even want to say taboo topics, but it's going through a lot of more transgressive sort of topics, especially for a film like this in 1973, because we're dealing with blood, we're dealing with multiple rapes, we're dealing with golden showers, we're dealing with, I'm using this plural, but I mean, besides the rapes, only like one of each, and underage sex, and but interestingly enough, it is playing more so as a dark comedy, and that is what Raymond Horsch intended for it. Actually, I do want to read this passage at the beginning of the liner notes, which will kind of put into better words than I can. It talks about the gentleman from the Distribpix going to see him, And, well, it gives him a call at first, and he says that it had a touch of pedophilia with a girl in a Catholic school uniform who may or may not have been underage at the time that the film was made, and a plot containing bondage, rape, urination, blood, as well as all sorts of hardcore sex, to which Ray replies, pause before concluding with a happy sigh, it was a sweet comedy. And I think the girl who played the schoolgirl, I believe, was 18. I think she had just turned 18 at the time. I forget the name of who she was. But that is to my knowledge on that front. But anyways, we're going through him, and we're going through these different situations. He's dealing with these different ladies, and it's all played up, like I said, like a dark comedy. I mean, the way he's going about this is not just in the dialogue itself, but even, you can definitely see that Paul Taylor, I almost called him Paul Stanley, he's making these wild noises, man. I mean, there's a couple times where he's having sex with these ladies, and it's just wild, man. The first time with Helen Madigan, it's just, he's going like, suck it! It's just insanity, man. And it's clearly played up. It's not, it's meant to be over the top, but at least in this instance, it's not meant to be too aggressive. It's just a ridiculous kind of a verbalization from him. And it happens through multiple times, like, later on when he has a sequence with Tina Russell. He's like on the bed, and then again when he another sequence there where he's on the ground where he's just making these crazy noises. I assume we're just ADR. I don't know what the audio process on this for the film. This DVD is also in mono, I should say, without subtitles. So there are some times in the film where the dialogue is a little difficult to hear. But I understand that, especially with a case like this, which this was considered a lost film for a while. That's another thing too. So I imagine that the elements probably weren't the strongest for a case like this. But it actually, for how they were able to clean it up, it does actually look good. I would say the video especially looks good. I was recording the audio for the trailer, and seeing the original film footage on that, it looks very rough. And actually, in the back of the line notes, it does say here, it was scanned in 2K using a 35mm blow-up internegative, and is presented in its original theatrical exhibition aspect ratio of 1:37:1. Color grading was performed using the ratio of 1:37:1. I read that twice. Color grading was performed using the DaVinci Resolve color suite. Thousands of small dirt and dust hits present, and the image were also removed using Phoenix Finish by Image Studios. The soundtrack was transferred from the 35mm optical track negative and is presented in its intended mono track. And that is definitely something to note right there, which is the audio of the film. And actually here it says as well that Ray remembers being unhappy with the release prints used. The original was 16mm. Sam Lake made a blow-up for 35mm release prints. The first scene was meant to be very dark and low-key. When they did the transfer, they mistakenly pumped light through it to make it normal. The blow-up was done on the cheap and spoiled the dark effect I was hoping for. Ironically, with the opening text being too dark to read, that it is kind of the complete opposite of that sequence right there. And it's interesting because when I'm watching something like this, is that because it's primarily, 98% of the film is primarily in interiors, in these bedrooms, that the cinematography or the lighting scheme that they may have been going for, I don't think came through well because of that issue on that, where a lot of the sequences, a lot of the way they're shot, they don't I don't even want to say look flat in a negative way. They more so just look like something closer to a traditional adult film of this time that would look. It does have a bit of grain to it, and I think that is, that isn't part to the actual transfer on this, but this does have a little bit of a darker look at times, but all of the scenes are photographed the same way. At least that's how it looks like here. That to distinguish one from the other is something that I couldn't notice. It all looked pretty straight through the entire time, so to speak. But what I was saying before, the taboo subjects that the movie is dealing with, we have his wife, played by the great Georgina Spelvin, and she is talking to him. She's like, man, I got a fantasy. I want to be raped. And he's like, man, I'm not cool with that. Actually, there was one line that I did laugh out loud at early on when she says she wants to be raped. And he goes, he's pleasuring her. And he's like, I'll pass the word to the door, man. It's ridiculous. And it's funny because she's talking about this crude kind of stuff. And then she says, make me, oh, you're going to make me kiss your you-know-what. Like, she's saying this explicit dialogue. And then she's like, I'm not going to say that, though. That'd be ridiculous. But it does fit into the overall kind of comedy. Because I was surprised that I would say half of the comedy in this works fairly well. I think Paul Taylor actually delivers the lines fairly well. Mostly where the issue comes from in terms of the comedy to drama is I think the tone is a little off at times where... as well with the soundtrack. There are just some times where the soundtrack doesn't feel appropriate for the scene, as in, like, there's one sequence towards the end of the film that I won't spoil, but it is definitely a serious sequence. They're playing this kind of upbeat, kind of jazzy sort of music, funky sort of music, and it doesn't really fit. It does feel a little less, what's the word I'm looking for? It feels a little less, what the hell word am I looking for here? Specifically programmed than it does just putting it at random in the picture. That is the thing. But, throughout the film we get his narration. He's talking about, this is a character who's intentionally, he's intentionally supposed to be a misogynist. He talks about how, women should be trained only to please men and stuff. But at the same time, he's a guy who you kind of get the idea that he has all these thoughts in his head. He wants to be this kind of, showboating sort of guy. But then he's kind of bumbling as well. There's one of the sequences when he wants to fulfill his wife's wish. But the way that all goes wrong, and it's just like there's a whole problem there. As well, because, he is a dirtbag, but I think he does play that character well enough that he is engaging to be with. I do, because this is the only film that he'd done, and actually the liner notes, I keep referencing the liner notes, but they're actually very well written here. They do mention that he was a theater actor as well in the local playhouse in Philly, because this film was shot in Philadelphia over the course of 12 days in the winter through February. And so I can only imagine. I imagine for that case, by shooting it in a lot of these interiors and a lot of these bedrooms and stuff, it's much easier than having to go outside and needlessly film out there. There is some sequences at the end of the film where he is walking the streets, and there are some great night shots. And for them talking about the image being a problem after it was transferred over, I would say all those night shots, they look fine. I love the neon signs when he's walking the streets. Sometimes with a lot of these, if it's not mastered correctly or if it's not transferred correctly, I should probably say, it can look like you don't know what you're looking at, but that's all shot very well, man. I don't know if that was shot later or, if that was shot at once. I really don't know, because it does feel, that's the only time in the film where it really kind of steps away from that. I don't, a lot of the bedrooms, I imagine were just in the same house. It looks like a lot of the same kind of carpet and stuff, but all the acting I thought was pretty solid across the board. There's no one that really stands out in terms of the main leads, man. I think some of the other ones, like there's the guy, and I do apologize, I don't know his name. And actually, that actor is Ed O'Shea. There's one sequence in the film where he's with Barney as well as Eddie's wife, who was played by Darby Lord Raines. And that sequence is very kind of big and over the top, much in the way of the rest of the film. But that's definitely, he doesn't have a whole lot to say in that sequence anyway. She ties him up and has sex with Barney in front of him and all that. But there's no one that, for a film like this, they're getting this New York talent, primarily with Georgina Spelvin and Tina Russell. But they're all giving solid performances. That's the thing. No one ever. They're giving different performances too. With Tina Russell, it's a very pulled back performance, kind of like, I always see Tina Russell as this sort of very kind of quiet, sort of hippie sort of girl. With Georgina Spelvin bringing, when I say more to the table, that's not a knock at Tina Russell. I'm just saying it's a different kind of performance overall. But I do think both of them do very good. With Georgina Spelvin, there's one sequence in the end, towards the end of the film, where she really has to kind of give it this real kind of strong emotion, and if that doesn't come across well, then it can come across as very insincere and phony. And for her to have that emotion and then flip on it once the sequence is wrapping up, and for her to kind of pull away and do something different with it, I think that's kind of a testament to how strong of an actress she really was. This was a year before The Devil and Miss Jones, which the front of DVD actually puts on the cover, with the star Devil and Miss Jones. And she has gone on, she of this of the golden age. I mean, anyone will tell you. You look at the strongest actresses from this era. She is up there. Devil Miss Jones and Wet Rainbow and all these just really terrific performances from her. She was definitely. I mean, if there ever was a crossover, she was one of these performers who could easily become something more of a mainstream performer. Although I will say, in the scene where she has to really kind of emote and get very emotional on it, there was a gnarly bruise on her leg, man, that I don't know what the story behind that is, man. It was noticeable as all hell. I mean, if you look, it's like right on the side of her leg. It is in the frame, man. And actually, speaking of which, one of the things I want to mention before in terms of the comedy, one of the points that I actually laughed out loud at, which I don't know if it's intentional or not, is that, he wants, at one point when he's seeing Tina Russell, he wants her to get him a beer, so she gets up, gets the beer, and she's like, "Where's the bottle opener?" And he's like, "Oh, it's right over there." And in the same frame, I mean, she's like right next to it, man. In the same frame, she just pulls over and just takes it off the shelf and casually walks over. I don't know if that's meant to be intentionally funny or not, but I thought the framing of that and the way they edited those shots together was actually pretty funny. I mean, for the most part, it is actually. I mean, it's a film that is trying to be provocative and it's trying to push buttons, and you have an unlikable character like this. When you have a character who is, treating these women not so great, has this wild ideology and all that, it is very easy to kind of, pick this apart and look at it from a more political kind of standpoint, which I don't think is really needed in terms of this is just a dirtbag of a character. That's really all it is, man. I don't think it's as deep as maybe one could probably pull from, And I also want to say before, one thing I forgot to mention before is that in terms of with the interiors, I like some of the background kind of art pieces, making these kind of strange sort of like genital pubic hair kind of like art pieces. At one point early on, he's working on it, and then you can see it like in the background and stuff, and he has like some like artwork up and all that, and I wonder if that was made for the film specifically, or if that was something that they already had, and they're just like, oh, this is gonna look great in the background. I really don't know. And I guess one last thing with the comedy too. I love any kind of film that goes actually inside a cinema. And there is one sequence at the end of the film where he goes inside a cinema, and whatever they were watching on screen, man, it is wild as hell. They're watching this like French film that we don't see, we only hear, and it's just like there's like you hear animals and stuff, and this lady's talking. It's just so ridiculous. Like really silly stuff like that makes me laugh out loud. And I think this is more of a curiosity piece than I would say a great film and all that. I mean, this does fall into a little bit of repetition at times, not just with the sex, but with him meeting up with a lot of these girls. There's not really much of a strong. I mean, the character rating here I don't think is as strong. I do like. This is the case where I actually think the other ladies in this are probably a little more interesting than Lee. Like the stuff with Georgina Spelvin and him, I thought was definitely the strongest stuff in the film. And the sequences with Tina Russell were good and all that, and especially the dark turn it kind of takes. But it didn't. It didn't totally mesh together for me. And I should also actually say that I think there's some cameos in there's a hospital scene towards the end of the film with Paul Taylor's wife and some of the other crew in this, which it'll say so in the liner notes. But overall, I mean, I do think this is an interesting curiosity piece. I think I may have said that actually about the Daisy May and Formal Fawcett. I don't know, but I would recommend it, man. It is a cool film. I think Paul Taylor and Georgina Spelvin really do hold up a lot of the film. And the other performances as well are good, but I did actually quite like this one. It was definitely an interesting film nonetheless. But onto the DVD itself, this does come with some bonus features. So this has an interview with Georgina Spelvin, which runs about 15 minutes. And curiously enough, she doesn't actually talk about the film. She talks about her. It's a quick interview. It talks about her career, becoming a performer. Harry Reams introducing her to Gerard Damiano, and her getting the role in Devil Miss Jones. Talks briefly about her part in Police Academy and all that, but it's a quick brief thing. The trailer for the film, it's got. Now, it's funny, it says vintage slideshow, but I was looking through it, and it just looks like screenshots from the film, and it looks digitized. It's pretty. I was expecting, like, I don't know, like newspaper clippings or maybe like a press release or something like that, but it's just screenshots of the film. I mean, I skimmed through it at first. I didn't finish it at the end, so maybe at the end there is something, but I didn't see anything. And then on the inside, we have liner notes, as well as I was mentioning before, and the liner notes were written by Benson Hirsch, Stephen Morowitz, and Laura LaRocca. as well as this interesting Ron Jeremy finger puppet cutout, even though he's not in the film. But maybe it's a Distribpix thing. He's looking good here, and you can cut out the holes here and make him walk. So if you're at your buddy's house and you don't have any Nintendo, you don't got any HBO, and you're just like, what are we gonna do tonight, guys? You bring over this, you cut out some holes, and you have a lot of fun, man. But the real curiosity piece on the bonus features was a short film. Now this was at the beginning of the short film. This was about 10 minutes, a 35mm short that was paired with Inside Jennifer Wells in 1977, which you can presume was made the same year. I mean, presumably if it's 35mm. And it's 10 minutes. It's not as if they extracted it from like a loop or something like that. But it is called Box Ball. I don't know who either of the people were. And when I first click on it, it gives you a warning up front, which is always a good sign. It's a whole warning right there. It says this may be disturbing, but this is real and this is all hardcore. And I was like, what am I getting myself into? And I'll tell you right now, there's really no way I can talk about this without being a little bit crude, so I normally try to be PG-13 in these conversations as much as you can, but gosh, man, this was something else. This is about 10 minutes, you got this dude and this chick in bed, and right after that, this chick is saying some crazy stuff, some stuff I'm not even going to repeat about what she likes to do in bed. And then she makes her way down to the guy's balls, and, it's, how do I want to put this? So she has a lot of fun with them. Maybe too much fun. It's been a while since I've cringed this hard at something. I mean, this was wild, man. She is pulling on these things. She is twisting them to the point where they are blood red, man. And what's funny is they keep cutting to this guy, and this guy looks dead. He's not even, really reacting. He's just kind of staring off. I think he's just falling asleep at one point. But she's, being very aggressive with, these, and, oh boy, let me tell you, if you're a fella, you're going to be sitting cross-legged watching this, man. It is truly wild, and my gosh, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So if you want to watch this, just be forewarned. It's really just that, man. It's wild. And actually, it's pretty gnarly as it goes on in terms of, I'm just watching this going like, this dude's going to pop one of these, man. There's no way this can end well. But overall, this is a nice package. This was, like I said, this from Distribpix in 2012. I bought this off of Mellowscene's website, and you can buy it from Distribpix's website as well. It's a cool film, man. Actually, the more I've talked about this, the more I like it. Good acting across the board. It's dealing with a lot of bizarre kind of topics, and a lot of the comedy works. Some of it doesn't. So the tone's a little bit off. It has its issues. The audio is a problem at times, but overall, I would actually recommend this release should you be interested. As well. I mean, the interview as well with Georgina Spelvin, it's all right. There's not really anything new you're going to learn here. It's also very brief, but liner notes are great. They're very well written. It gives some good perspective into Raymond Horsch's life in terms of his criminal activity before and after this. And actually, it's a little bit outdated because it goes up to a certain point when he was going on trial for something that eventually resolved itself. So either way, that's the erotic memoirs of a male chauvinist pig in next episode 2 of Peephole Pictures. Thank you guys for listening yet again. I already got the 3rd episode being worked on now, so that will come out hopefully sooner than later. But again, a lot of views in the first one. People seem to be enjoying it. So, feel free to leave comments down below with, what you liked and didn't like about, what you liked and didn't like about it, the film and all that good stuff. Any kind of tidbits, anything I may have gotten wrong, anything like that. That's all I got. All right, thank you.